For more on the financial stakes for Hollywood, we welcome back David Bank. David is an analyst with RBC Capital Markets and ranks as a Bloomberg Best. That means we crunch the numbers, and David is one of the most accurate analysts overall on media stocks. So, David.
And I can order a popcorn really well, so, I'm an expert
I have
at this.
yet to test your skills in that department, but I'll test them in a couple of other departments right now. Let me ask you this question. A record Memorial Day weekend.
Yes.
Does it save the 2011 movie season?
Well, looking at the box office year to date is a little bit misleading because the whole shooting match kind of starts in the beginning of May, and things have picked up a bunch. So I think what you're going to see is a little bit of a tale of two cities. That this was an enormous weekend for Warner Brothers. All they have to do is get through Green Lantern, then they got Harry Potter. It's likely to be a home run. DreamWorks, on the other hand, very few bets. This one didn't work out so great for Panda. So I think the short answer is it very well could. You kind of have to. It's like the playoffs versus the regular season for a lot of sports, where almost everybody makes the playoffs. This is the playoffs, and almost everybody makes it starting in May.
It's pretty clear anyway, right, that as you point out, for Warner Brothers, The Hangover Part 2, a home run. Costs, what, $80 million to make?
$70 million, yeah.
Right, it's already got more than $100 million at the box office. It's going to get more.
Right.
Kung Fu Panda, though, Part 2, is it fair at this point to call it a disappointment? You have to figure that there is tons left to go in DVDs and on-demand purchases, etc.
Well, here's what I think. I think it's fair to say the domestic box office is a disappointment. What's interesting is the international box office almost equaling the domestic box with relatively few openings. So I think it opened in like 11 markets overseas, and I think it almost equaled its domestic performance. So it may end up picking up a little bit stronger than we thought. We're not really counting so much on the DVD market and the home video stuff anymore. The question is, how does it do international? And international has saved a lot of movies' bacons.
You raise an excellent point. Why on earth do we care as much as we do about the domestic box office anymore? I mean, think about Pirates, right? It cost $250 million bucks to make, very expensive, but the international box office is already, what, $330 million or something like that?
We care for two reasons. The first is, for the last 50 years, we've been looking at it as the primary driver and not international.
Has that flipped?
Well, it's flipped, yeah. I think what's happened is, as you've gotten some of these more developing nations like China and Russia and Brazil, India, we're seeing international start to contribute a disproportionate amount, actually more than the domestic in a lot of cases right now. That's really changed, and people are just sort of getting used to it. And so I think it's tied to the second reason, which is we have better data on domestic. So, we as Wall Street, we focus on where we have data, because it's easier that way.
So
I think that's the two
market
reasons.
is still unpredictable.
It's unpredictable. We don't all markets don't open at the same time. It's easy here. Every movie opens in every U.S. market at the same time. Internationally, the Philippines market is really different from the Mexican market, which is really different from the Brazilian market or the Russian market. Also, things open differently. Last summer, the World Cup, a big deal, kind of for us, a huge deal internationally. You had to delay the opening of like every movie. So it makes things more complicated.
But at the very least, should we still not be looking at the weekend box office in the U.S. and Canada and trying to judge a movie's success on that basis?
Well, yes, I think we should, but I think we really need to revisit another kind of week or two out and see what the international markets are doing.
Okay, so if we're going to look into the future, whether it's a week or two or further into the future, who's best positioned for the rest of the summer? You talked about Warner Brothers only having to nail the Green Lantern now. What about some of the other studios? Paramount has a couple of big films coming up. Transformers among them, right? Super 8.
Yeah, well, what works internationally really well are shoot 'em up, blow 'em up kind of movies. What doesn't tend to work well, or what don't tend to work well, are romantic comedies. So, and that's why you see the bulk of these kind of summer tentpoles as these shoot 'em up, blow 'em up movies. So, Transformers, absolutely. I think the final Harry Potter for Warner's, again, another huge movie. A sleeper, potentially. This movie Super 8 that Paramount is opening shortly. It's kind of a mix of E.T. and Stand By Me. Very cheap movie to make. J.J. Abrams, Steven Spielberg project. Could be a new franchise for Paramount. But I think the next big one is Cars 2. Cars 2 for Disney.
Okay, quick question about Cars, though. Are the disappointing numbers for Kung Fu Panda 2 at all a warning sign for Cars 2?
It could be. I think the differences between DreamWorks and Pixar is that DreamWorks tends to be a little bit clever, a little bit punchy one-liners, and the Pixar movies tend to be more story-oriented for kids. So they're really different genres, very subtle but very different. And I think because Cars is such an incredibly strong franchise, far stronger than Panda, that doesn't really concern us.
All right, David, always great to have you here in the Inside Track. David Bank, he's a Bloomberg Best and media analyst at RBC Capital Markets.